So a lot of Saturday mornings, I like to get up early with my brother and we take our Cobras out and go drive around a little bit. And it's always fun. Sometimes we ride together and we just take one. Sometimes we take both of them. And so we wanted to go to the neighborhood we grew up in. And we do that usually around the fall. It's just something that brings us back to the time we bought our very first Mustang in November. And it's just a wonderful place to go and drive around a little bit. And so we got the cars together and we met up and we went for a drive. This section of the neighborhood is where that green Bullet Mustang number 974 used to be that we talk about often. This was the first New Edge Mustang I ever got to ride in, and because of this car, I really liked the Bullet Mustangs and I ended up buying my True Blue Bullet. And so this part of the neighborhood where we like to drive around reminds us of what it was like when these cars were new. This Bullet was brand new back then, and the owner had supercharged it. That's why it says SC 435. And so I really like this car, and my brother did too. And my brother and I talk about how grateful we are that there are things like this that make us so excited, because it helps us enjoy life a lot more when we get excited and nostalgic about things. And so this Bullet Mustang lived right on the bend of where we're driving the Cobra right now. And the next house over was another Mustang I'll show you. This 96 Tangerine Orange Mustang GT. Not this exact car because I never had a picture of it, but one that looked just like this lived the next house over. So this was a fun place for us to come drive the cars that we love, the ones that we got for ourselves that in our opinion are a lot cooler cars, but still we respect the other ones, and we're able to come take these cars and drive them around. And so we like to come back here with our dream Cobras. So every time I drove my Cobra, when I'd bring it home, I'd always open the hood and let the heat out of the engine bay. I felt like that would keep the plastics better and the hoses from cracking and getting too hot, and especially the SVT plaque here on the valve cover from getting yellowed. I see a lot of those that are kind of yellowing, probably from a lot of time with heat. So one Saturday morning, my brother and I had set apart some time to go over to his house and do a walk around video of the Orange Cobra. He wanted to put it on his YouTube channel, and I thought it'd be fun to share it with people and show what the car was like. And at this time, the car had a short Mac intake, a BBK throttle body, and the Mac catback. It also had a Cobra R Ripper shifter from B&M, but basically, other than that, it was absolutely stock, and it's actually become more stock since then, and we'll get into that in a second here. But basically, we did a walk around video, and we wanted to go out and shoot some video of what the car sounded like driving around and everything. And so it was a very good video, and in the video of it driving around, you can really hear the supercharger whine because the exhaust isn't as loud. It had the factory mid-pipe with 4 cats, and the Mac catback wasn't very loud, but it was a little more rumbly. The mid pipe and the catback will be changed later, and I'll show all that, but at this point it was kind of a quiet setup, so you can actually hear the supercharger whine a lot more even when the car's driving away from you. So here's some throwback to that footage of driving the Cobra around at this state. Unfortunately, it was a little windy that day, and so that got in the way of the camera, so I apologize for the wind noise, but you'll get to hear the car pretty good here. And pay special attention to what the supercharger sounds like with the stock pulley. A lot of pulley Cobras you hear, you can tell that sound of the blower, it's screaming. With a stock bigger pulley, the supercharger isn't spinning as fast, and so it's a different tone and RPM range for the blower, and so you can really hear it in this video. It's kind of a long, quieter, drawn out whine, but it is pronounced, especially with a quieter exhaust, and so I have an ear for it. I've heard other non-pulley Cobras be driving around in videos, and I'll say, that's a stock pulley, isn't it? And people are like, yeah, how can you tell? But you can hear it. It's kind of a different tone and drawn out sound that the supercharger makes. Now, we didn't notice this till later when we saw the video, but there's a rod in the road that gets run over and shot under the tire. Luckily, it didn't do any damage. Sounded really good. It's fun to hear a stock pulley Cobra, and it's such an awesome car to have. I really like looking back on this and seeing that at this time in my life I had acquired quite a rare car and something that's going to continue to go on as a very respected and valuable car in the future. And so to see me out here having fun, driving it around, sliding it around, that's a good feeling, because some people say if all it does is sit in the garage, then it might as well be a paperweight. Well, this car to me was not a paperweight. I got it out, I enjoyed it, I drove it, I raced it a little bit, I drifted around just a little bit. Like, I didn't go do donuts or anything abusive. I did do a couple brake stands in it. So this actually is a little bit out of order, but I did go out and do a couple of burnouts with it just because it was so easy. You just rev it up and drop the throttle and it just wants to go. Let me show you an example. So you can see how effortlessly it just slays the tires. Lots of torque right at 2,000 RPM, you know. So you rev it up and go and it just wants to spin. But I did go out and do a brake stand with it or two, and it was fun. Unfortunately, I don't have the video of when I did this. I did have a video of it, but I deleted it because at the time I didn't want people to think that I was just out beating on my Cobra. And so I don't know whatever happened to the original copy of that video, but you can see the burnout marks here in the road. Now this happened out of order because the next thing I want to do is show you what I did to protect the car. And this happened before the burnouts. So when you own a boosted car, you have to take very good care of it. It's a lot easier to melt pistons and destroy the engine if the car runs lean, or if you have too much boost and not enough octane. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong with detonation and so forth. And so I would drive over to my brother's house in the mornings, on the weekends, and this weekend we were going to work on the Cobra a little bit. We were going to take off the mid pipe and we were going to put on a other mid pipe he had that had a bung welded in it. It's like an extra O2 sensor hole, and we were going to put a wideband sensor in the car, and that measures the air fuel ratio, because I wanted to make sure that this car was running safely, and with no gauges on the car there was no way to tell that. So I didn't put a pillar gauge or anything in the car, and I just used a gauge he had, and he had the part that goes, it's like a clip-on piece that just goes over the steering column, and it houses the gauges in it. So we just wired everything up, kind of temporary, but here you can see the wideband gauge there. And when you're full throttle in a boosted car, you want to see it around 11.2. And you know, driving around it can be 15, 14, 17, it can fluctuate, but full throttle matted down with boost, you want to see it in the low 11s. And so this car had the stock tune, but it had a Mac cold air intake and a BBK throttle body in the catback, but I think the throttle body and the intake was just a little much for it. It was like, I think it was in the 12s when I went full throttle. So I was like, okay, I want to take this off and return it to stock. And so I went home and I ordered some parts, and I looked through what I had, and I had different mass airflow units, and you know, here's some different intakes and stuff, but ultimately you can see the mass airflow housing was a lot bigger on that Mac one. But I bought an 03 Cobra stock intake and mass airflow sensor and MAF, and I even looked at the spark plugs and changed those. And when you look at the plugs, you can tell that they're not melted or anything. There's no detonation or problem going on here. And these were even the original plugs. They had the paint dots on them from the factory. So I even put a colder plug in it, which is a TR6 NGK plug. And this is what a lot of guys run in their Cobras, especially if they turn up the boost. And so I probably didn't need these, but I thought I might as well have a colder plug in there anyway, just for safety. I think most of the lean condition was coming from this big BBK throttle body. So I took off the cruise control and throttle cables, and I replaced that throttle body with a stock twin 57mm off of another Cobra, and it worked out perfectly. The air fuel ratio was right at 11.2, 11.3, right where it should be. So I was happy to see that the car was safe to go have some fun with, and you know, this actually happened before the racing video I showed earlier. This was earlier on. I just wanted to put that other video out sooner, but I was glad I did this because as time went on, I watched other friends with supercharged cars melt their engines and blow them up and stuff. So I was just happy to do everything I could to make sure this car was running perfectly safe and get those other parts off the car that shouldn't be on there with the stock tune. And it's not like I was going to go race this car a whole lot, but it's nice to know that it's safe. And if you do run these cars a lot, you should have the gauges in them to monitor all that and make sure that you're not running lean, which I do have in my other Cobra, which has a bigger supercharger and fuel system and big alternator and everything on it. And so it's important to do that. But anyway, that's the update for the Cobra so far. There's more stuff coming here. I got a lot of things to show you, so stay tuned for the next part of the series. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more on this Cobra story and more Mustang content.